This is Gemara Moed Katan Daf. Hey, old learning should be a tremendous choshidach. Please Chaim the Devar Shemim Rashi is a good Shan Lish Shan Makal Ron Chav Zavishenta Skir Bas Zavishendel Shema ben Chaya Oifik ben Teli Shlomo ben Libi Zava Rachel Bastina. They should find their shidach Bakari Mamish. Well as it's chos for Shleim Shal Yosef ben Yerveda Mer ben Vegu Chaim Zara Shlomo Tzion Rezo Zer Baskanadi to Basim Chaysa Yisrael Mendel Let's read the Shalei Shlomo Zami ben Vegu Shechana Shmuel ben Tila Dina ben Chan Rezo ben Chaim Basmina Dina ben Shed Mega Siva Vig Rucha Basera and Naftal Zimech Laster Amram ben Yaakov Yitzara Baskila Shom Yizach ben Yester Yehuda Rafal Avram ben Rachel Odeh Shimshon ben Chana V'Gal Pedro B'Asazer Chabercha ben Nachman Leir Miriam Gabriela Bas Bluma Yitzchak Yisrael Yitzchak ben Dina B'Sei Sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. We pick it up on the very bottom of Daf Dalet Amud Beis, the final two words that the Gemara says Umetakinin Es. As we turn over to today's Daf Hey Amud Aleph, this is quoting the Mishnah Kol Kuli Hamayim Sheb'Shus Rabim. You had a fixed the damaged public water supplies that are in Rosh Hashanah. And again, we comment and we remind that it's true a lot of the practicalities, different cases are difficult for us to relate to, but we have to pull out the general rule. We have to get the klalim, because then we'll know how to apply them to our practical life. Says the Gemara, Chatita in Chafira Lai. What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said that you're allowed to do Chatita. What was Chatita? That was clearing out the debris. What are you not allowed to do? Chafira, digging a cistern even further. And if you remember back on Daf Beis Amud Aleph, we pointed out thesis over there that said included in Chatita is not only clearing, but digging the ditch deeper. That was also part of the clearing out of the cistern, whereas Chafira, digging a new ditch, that is forbidden, again, for the same reason that we keep on saying, because it is a Tircha Yisera. Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Yochanan, Lo Yishana L'Shin Ram Tzricham Lahem. So he comments, the din in the Mishnah, that you're not allowed to do Chafira, you're not allowed to dig a new ditch, a new well, is only if the public does not need it. Avol Rabim Tzricham Lahem Afilu Chafira Moter. If everyone needs it, even digging a new well is going to be mutter. Why? Tzarech Rabim. This public matter is going to be mutter. Ask the Gemara 1 second. 5 lines at the top. Is that true? That when the public needs it, it's mutter. Vatani, we learned to the Raisa. You got to clear out the debris of these wells, these cisterns of a singular person, and needless to say of the public. However, the Brisa continues. You're not allowed to dig a new well, a new cistern for the public, and needless to say, if owned by a singular person. So what is the case, explains the Gemara? My love that the Bryce is referring to, seemingly the Bryce is referring to that the public needs it, and yet, what does the Bryce say? And yet the Bryce says that you're not allowed to dig a new ditch. The reason we're assuming it's Rabim Sricham Lahem is because the contrast between the previous brisa and this brisa. Let's take one moment to see the second Rashi and the second line in the Amid. Rashi says, "Avalo chaytin oisan," that if you're going to tell me that the brisa above was talking about a singular person, that a single person needs it, then we could explain that this brisa, "Avalo chaytin," is b'she'ein yachid shvichlem, when you're not allowed to clear it out, when a singular person does not need it. But if you're going to tell me that ad chaytin b'she'ein yachid tzarich lehem, excuse me, I think I'm reading the incorrect Rashi. Sorry, we are reading the incorrect Rashi. I take that back. We'll even undo the highlighting to keep things clear. Again, we just go to the Brisa. And the Brisa and the Gemara was Medaik, and the Gemara inferred from the Brisa that we must be talking about that the public needs it. What's the reason? The reason actually, Mefarshim explained, is for the wording. That what is the wording? It says that where are these pits? It says, Barish Shichem Aris Shel Rabim. It doesn't say Bir Rabim. It doesn't say it's in the public. It says Shel Rabim. It's of the public. Seemingly honing in on the detail that it's a public well, that the public needs it. And yet, what does it say? And yet it says that you're not allowed to dig a new ditch. So it says, the Gemara, we see that even when the public needs it, you're not allowed to dig a new ditch. On that answers the Gemara, no, lie. It's talking about a case where the public does not need them. And now the Gemara says, 1 second. If you're correct, let's go back. It's that Bryce and reanalyze. The Kavasog Gabi Yochid. What's a similar case? What's the parallel case by a singular individual that the Bryce would be referring to? When the yachid does not need it. And on that says the Gemara, Chatita Mishari. If a yachid, if even a singular person does not need it, are you going to tell me that you're allowed to clear out the debris? Again, we're allowing you to clear out the debris if the single person doesn't need it. V'atani, we learned in a brayso. What did the brayso say? A new brayso. You let it gather the water in. It says clearly that if it's a singular, that the singular person does not need it, then what's the halacha? Loi chaytetin. V'loi shavin esidkeim. V'shal rabim chaytetin. So you let it clear it out. V'shavin esidkeim, you let it repair the cracks. So I asked the Gemara, we have a problem. You want to suggest that it's talking about rabim shricham lehem, but then the first part of the brayso must be in rabim ain't shricham lehem. That means yachid ain't shricham lehem. But if a singular person doesn't need it, how are you allowing to clear out the debris? We see clearly in a brayso that you cannot clear out the debris. Ve'lamai, says the Gemara, you're right. No, you're going to have to say b'shiyachid tzarich lehem. You must say that the case is that the singular person needs it. So what's the parallel? Now we're flipping it. What's the parallel by the public? But says the Gemara, 1 second. Now we have a question the other way. Chafira miyaser. If the public needs it, why are you not letting it dig the ditch? V'atanya bayra shichan amayrais shall yachid koytman techen v'chatin azan avlo shavin eset came v'lo chatin l'teichen v'lo yisadin asa besid v'shal rabim. That was the brayso we just quoted a moment ago. V'shal rabim, but the end of the brayso says chayfer noisan, you're allowed to dig it. V'sadin asa besid. So we're stuck. We have multiple braysos that don't work with each other. What is the case? Does rabim need it? Does rabim not need it? Does yachid need it? Does yachid not need it? How are we going to reconcile all the various braysos? Says the Gemara, Lakashach Kamaisa. Based on what you're saying, now the original brayso is shver. So on that, the Gemara explains we have to change the original brayso. Tritz alchi chaytin bayrish shel yachid. When are you allowed to dig a new ditch? B'she yachid tzarichlem. Vein tzarichlem b'shel rabim kisha rabim tzrichem. There it is. It's not perfectly parallel. We're changing the wording ever so slightly. That when you allowed to dig the singular ditch when they needed the public ditch, when they need it. Ta'afilu, and this is the critical word. Ta'afilu chafira of the public ditch is mutter. But not when the public does not need them. So that is a new way of explaining that we're going to have a stark contrast between the yachid and between the rabbim in this new explanation. That when the Rabbim is Sricham Nahem, we're even going to allow Chafira, we're even going to allow digging the new ditch, but when the Yachid does not need them, then we're not going to even allow the Chatita, even allow the clearing out the ditch. That is the Teretz. And Amar Ravashi says that Masisa Namideka, that in reality our Mishnah works out beautifully this way. It said the Mishnah concluded, I say Kol Tzarchei Rabbim, a general rule. You could do things for the general public. Says the Gemara, Kol Asui. What's this word Kol coming to include? Lav Lasuri Chafira. Says Ravashi, you know what it's coming to include? It's coming to include Chafira. And it's teaching me that you're allowed to dig the new ditch. Answers Gemara, it's going to teach me a totally different case. So again, the Gemara is falling off of its proof, but doesn't destroy the answer. We're saying we don't have a proof from the Mishnah. Because what case is the Mishnah of the Kol? The general rule that all public matters are allowed, it's coming to include the following. Yoitzin lokot es adrachim, that you're allowed to go out to do what? To clear off the thorns from the road, not the thrones from the thorns, the thorns from the road. Ulitakin is our chavos to fix the streets. And you had to repair the market streets. You had to measure the mikvahs. Unless the mikvah does not have 40 saw, what do you do? We direct water into it to make it have 40 saw. Let's say you don't do these things. You don't fix all the public entities. An important matter, says the Gemara. If you don't do this, we're telling you you're allowed to do it in Cholmad. You're allowed to fix the streets and get rid of the thorns and fix the ditches and repair the roads. And if you don't, it's as if you spilled blood. The blood is upon you. Says the Gemara, that's how important it is to make sure the public areas are safe and well kept. Ask the Gemara, what do you mean? The Mishnah said explicitly, so it says the Gemara, why are you telling me that the extra call is coming to include that? It says it explicitly. What's it coming to include? My love, so must be, because it explicitly spells out these cases, that the original general rule is coming to include, like we originally thought, it's coming to include digging a new ditch, and the Gemara concludes Shema Mina, that is a conclusive proof. Says the Gemara on the fourth medium-sized line, now we're at the end of the Mishnah. So again, the previous part of the Mishnah taught us an incredible rule that anytime you're dealing with a public matter, you're allowed to do it on Chol Hamoed. A new heter, the Mishnah began with a heter, a hefsei gadol. Hefsei gadol was only allowed for tircha, not tircha yasir, not excessive work. And then we went to the next level heter. What was the next level heter? That was the tzayrich of the rabbim, and that's what we dealt with today, the first 10 minutes of today's shir, dealing with how far does the tzayrich of the rabbim go? Does it even include digging a ditch for the first time? But now we're going to the end of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, you let a mark off of the graves. Where do we see in the Torah the concept that if the mark off the grave, says the Gemara, multiple terutzim? In the pasuk says that you saw, is a pasuk in Yechezkel, not in the Torah, in Nevi'im, that you saw the bone of the man, you built the next to it a marker to ensure that no one would become tameh, and that's going to be the general theme over here, that why are we marking off the graves, why are we marking off wherever there is tamah, to ensure that no one that is tar, no one that is holding truma, would encounter such a grave and make them tameh. Amir Ravina Ravashi, Amakri Deleze Yechezkel man, Amar, you tell me the source is from Yechezkel. What about before Yechezkel? Sarvashi replies back to Ravina like a good Jew. According to you, Ravina, the statement of Rav Chisda, we don't know this from Moshe, we know this from Yechezkel. Now come to the Beis Hamikdash if you don't have a bris milah. Makmi deleze Yechezkel man Amar. Who said it before Yechezkel? Ella Gamari Gamirila. You know what's the Talach LeMoshe Sinai. We know it as an oral tradition. What did Yechezkel do? They found the precedent. He found an allusion to it in the Torah. Hachanami, so to hear Gemara Gamrila, so to hear to Gemara Talach LeMoshe Sinai. Yechezkel goes and he puts it onto a pasuk. So source number one, that how do we know we have to build a tzion, we have to build a marker next to a grave to ensure purity? It's from source number two says the Gemara Avu says the second source. It says by Tziras you should call out, you are Tameh. We tell him to stay away from me. Keep away, I don't want you to become Tameh. Another source to prove that there's a concept that we want to make sure that people stay away from Tama. Tuma Kaira Law Vaimeris Lay Price, that the one whose tummy calls out and tells them to stay away. Ask the Gemara, really? Is that what the pasuk is coming to teach us? We need it for a different rice that says V'tami Tami Yikra. You know what the pasuk means? Doesn't mean practically stay away, I'm tummy. You know what it means? You have to tell the public that you're in pain for and people daven for you. Says the Gemara, V'tami Yikra. My V'tami, the double worded Shema Mina. Tar teaches two different halachas. Teaches number one, tell people to daven for you, and number two, the halacha, the source for our Mishnah, the precedent to mark off and ensure that people say Hatar and do not encounter Tama. Third source, you never want to have a stumbling block, a very all-inclusive rule, and therefore one avenue of not having a stumbling block is to ensure where there is Tama, where there is Taira. Rapapa Amar, number four, says Rapapa, Vamar Salu Panu Ladarach. He says, pave, clear the road. Again, another pasuk is a pasuk in Yeshaya. That's a way of marking the path to clear the road that people could go right through. Rav Chanina Amar, Rimu Mechsham Miderech Ami, remove the stumbling block. Rav Shubay Dravidi Amar, Badat Lamasaderech, Sheyalchu Batal the road they could go on. Marzucha Amar, Bazartamis V'nei Yisrael Mitamasa, be careful from your Tama. Rav Ashi Amar, Ushmartem as Mishmarti, also Mishmeres, the Mishmarti, you should make a guarding for for the truma, and that's going to be the way by making the marking the graveyards. Ravina Amar v'sam derech erenu b'yesha lekim, says Ravina, one who sets the way, you'll have the salvation, you'll have the Yeshua of Hashem, and again to remain tahar. Amar Yeshua ben Levi kol Hashem archaisav soichav rasav shasai shel Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Whoever puts his places ways, literally, he's going to see the Yeshua of Hashem. Shem for some derech al tikri v'sham el v'sam derech, place your road and you'll see the salvation. Rav Yani haveilei ahu talmidus. So after all the various resources, to fact, you have to mark off a grave, you have to ensure that no one becomes tamei. Rav Rani had a talmud the chol yom v'makshei b'shabbata the regilu lav v'makshei. They would always ask you questions, but on Shabbos when there was a big drasha, he wouldn't ask Rav Yami the questions in order to make sure that perhaps Rav Yami didn't have an answer. He wouldn't look bad in front of the public. And Kari Alei and Rav Yami would say about this Talmud as we turn over to one who knows the ways, he's going to get to salvation, referring to this Talmud that he knows when to ask and when not to ask, as the Tab Rashi points out. Tanu Rabbanan, now we go into what type of Tama. Ein Mitzayin, when do we mark off a grave? Lo al Kezayis min Ameis, not if it's just a Kezayis, or Etzev Keseira, not if it's a bone the size of a barley grain, Lo al Davar She'inoi Mitam Ba'ayel, not in something that does not give off Tama Ayel. Avol Mitzayin, and when do we, mark off? Al Shidra, we mark off if there's a shedder, if there's the spine of the person, Val Gulgulais, if there is the skull, Al Roiv Binyan, if the majority of the body, of the bones of the body are there, Al Roiv Minyan, the majority of the number of the bones, one's in size and one's in quantity, Hamaze of the mace. And the Brisa continues, so it's one half of, don't mark off teeny little pieces, mark off the spine, the skull, etc. Vein Mitzayin Al Vadais, we don't mark off when it's a Vadai. If it's a massive graveyard, you don't have to mark it off. Everyone knows it's a graveyard, it's a Vadai. You mark off questionable areas. What is a suffix? Says the Gemara, you mark off canopies and protrusions that go over from a cemetery and go off over a road. So you mark off so people to know, the Kohanim know not to walk into that area, or actually anyone in the world of eating kachim, certainly the Kohanim, ubeis abras, and a field that was plowed over. And the Brisa continues, vein mamid and sion b'makim tama. We do not place the marker directly where the tama is. Why shalav says a tyrus? Because if you go and it's too late, you just bumped into the tama. Now whatever you're holding, which is tar, now it became tama. So you make the grave marker a drop beforehand, so you have area to stop. But don't make it too far away, because you don't want to ruin Eretz Yisrael, because all the area that's marked off, you can't plow those, you can't plant in those areas. Because and that's the end of the Brisa. Now ask the Gemara, what was one of the things that we did not mark off? One of the things not to mark off was Kezayis Miramis. You don't have to mark off, it's one little Kezayis of a dead person. Ask the Gemara about 10 lines down. Hey, I'm in base. Why don't you mark it off? Are you telling me that the Kezayis of a mace does not have Tuma oil? Does not have that if it's under one roof, the whole area becomes Tameh? V'atani, we learned in a Brisa, the following cases are those which make impart tuma via the oil. Kezayis ben amazed. So why are we marking off when there is a kezayis olive piece of a dead body? Excuse me. Says Rabbi, we're done with precisely a kezayis. The soiv mechsar chaser, because at the end of the day, it's going to shrink a little bit. It's going to decompose to the ground, and therefore mutav yisrael of truma kaichin lefisha. It's better for 1 or 2 moments for the truma that kachim to burn upon it, Val Yisrael love la'aylam, and not to burn a new aylam vayit after it becomes decomposed. So it says the Gemara, there's no reason to mark off a kezayis. It's true that when you have a kezayis in a bar, it's tumah, but as soon as it decomposes, it drop less than a kezayis, and it won't give off tumah, and that's why you don't mark off that area. Says the Gemara of Eluin Asfekos, in the following cases, we said that you have to mark off when you have a suffix, you have a doubtful tumah. What are those cases? Schachai, chuparos, protrusions, and canopies. Schachai, what's an overhang? Ilan It's referring to a tree that hangs over the ground. Parois, what is referred to when it says the protrusions? Avanim parois hayotzim min hageder, stones that stick out of the wall that could carry over the tama. Beis hapras, what's the case of beis hapras? Kitanam we learned in the Mishnah. When you plow over a graveyard, that makes it called a beis hapras, because we assume that there's some parts of the mesim, some parts of the dead bodies that get stuck in the ground. A furrow's length, mea amma of 100 amma from the grave, because when you plow the grave over for 100 amos, we assume there's parts of the grave, parts of the mace there, and therefore will impart tama. That's the case of suffix tama, and that's the case you have to mark off to ensure that everyone stays far away. But says the Gemara, about 20 lines down, the first word line is Milai, ubeis hapras mi mitami ba'oil. Ask the Gemara, 1 second. You're marking off a beis hapras, but is there really tama oil? You're allowed to walk through a beis hapras by blowing as you walk, because any of the bits of tama of the decomposed bodies are going to be little bits, and if you blow as you walk, what's going to happen? It'll blow away all those areas. So clearly there's no tama oil if we're going to allow you to blow and walk. He goes so far as to say that it's tar, and we do not have to be concerned with the little fragments of bones. So I asked the Gemara, how are you telling me that a beis hapras is tama oil if we see clearly not that way? There's two different types of beis hapras. One is where the kever is lost, and that beis hapras certainly gives off tama because there's a big grave somewhere. And one is where it was plowed over. And says the Gemara, if you have a field that you plowed over the grave, the Gersa changes it actually over here, that you lost the grave, is that called a beis hapras? Answers Gemara, in Vatanan, it is, as we learned in a Mishnah, Shloisha beis hapras, in there's 3 types of beis hapras. Sadash never by kever, you lost the grave. Sadash nechash by kever was plowed over. V'sada buchen, and the last case is a wailing field, which the Gemara is about to explain. So the Gemara is just answering before we go further. The Gemara is answering these 2 types of beis hapras. If it was plowed over, then it's true there's no tama oil. But if it's that you lost the grave inside of it, then there certainly is tamas oil. But the Gemara asks now, my sada baichem, what are you referring to when you say this wailing grave? Rabbi Yeshua bar Abba Mishnei Deula Amar Sadash Shemaftirim B'Meisim. It's the field where they take leave of the dead. That when they're transporting a dead body at the end of the field, they put it in one place, and the next group comes to pick it up. And in that field, they would cry when they would meet each other over the dead body. In that field, we assume that there might be a little bit of the dead body that might have fallen off, that there was unaccounted for, and that area has tama. But Taimamai explains the Gemara, why is this called a beis hapras? Like we just explained, because people are meyayish, people abandon it, people aren't thinking, because since there's 2 different groups tending to the same mace, one drops it off and one picks it up, each one thinks the other one tends for it, and it could be that a piece of the body, the decomposed body, will fall off and leave tama in the field. Ask the Gemara to conclude today, are you telling me that a field that was shenechash by kever, a field which is plowed over, does not require a marker? Tani learned in the Brisa, you find the field with a marker, and you don't know the nature. If there are trees, it must be that there was a grave that was plowed over. Must be the grave was lost. And if you there has to be an old person to tell you exactly what was there prior. But what do we see in this Brisa? We see that they indeed used to put the tzia, and they would put the marker even over a field that they plowed over. Answers the Gemara, Amara Papa, 5 lines from the bottom. Kitanihi b'sadasha avad boikara. Again, the same answer. There, the kever was lost. The sayuna, that is the case that they marked off. Because in that field, now the question is, Yishba ilanas b'yidua shenechash ba kever, ein ba ilanas b'yidua she'avad by kever. And those are the 2 cases. So when it's avad by kever, then we assume there's still tama nechrash, then not. Ask the Gemara 1 second. I don't understand. Maybe the trees are on the inside and the grave is on the outside. So how do you know that because you see the trees, you know that it was plowed over? Answers the Gemara. The case is the trees are right on the boundaries. The trees are right on the boundaries, and therefore the grave is certainly not on the outside of the trees, as the trees already have the boundary, and therefore it must be that the grave is somewhere inside that field, and that's going to be field of the suffix, that's going to be the field of the concern. We'll pick up from Daf Vav the next year, Amir Tzah Hashem.